Hi everybody, welcome to this chat that I'm about to have with Muvindu. Hi Muvindu.
Hi.
So let's just dive right into it, right? We are here to talk about something particular that happened through your social media channels beginning of 2023 and under the name of Dead Laxmiis. It's a post you put out on the 3rd of January, I think,
Yeah.
and created a lot of let's say heat on social media, not just in Sri Lanka but across South Asia, through multiple channels, through multiple dialogues. Can you first tell me what this is? What is Dead Laxmiis?
Basically, Dead Laxmiis was a project of mine. Actually, you can say it's still ongoing, where I wanted to create sort of a alternative history of this punk band, which happened in early 2000s of Sri Lanka. And I used, I'll get into tools later, but I initially published this story with a couple of images, which I generated using AI,
Right.
and with like a backstory saying this band, these certain things, events happened in this particular time, and they are called Dead Laxmiis. That was the initial post or the initial step I did with Dead Laxmiis.
Okay. So when you initially put it out, it didn't come out, or you didn't put it out as AI art or anything to do with AI, but it came out as a story of Dead Laxmiis, this alternative punk band, women band, and it was the story and that very vivid imagery that I hope you'll get to see, that captured the audience. People got caught to the story, the narrative, and the fact that something like this existed, and not only existed but existed as a counterculture almost movement at a very vital point in time in the history of Sri Lanka. So you are a mixed media artist, right? You do music, you do videos, you do films, digital collages, all of this. But what you did with Dead Laxmiis and the way it came out initially, how you first presented it to the world, is a narrative, is a story. Like you said, it's an alternative interpretation of the history.
Yeah.
What made you do that? What made you put it out as a story and an alternative take on history than just putting it out as a piece of art?
Yeah, I think for a long time I always had this sort of idea, or like a sort of, you can say like a fantasy, where these particular bands or certain events that happened, and mainly the areas or genres or subjects that I like but never actually happened here. And I was always fantasizing like what would be the situation, or what would be, if it's a band, what would be the sound of them now if that actually happened back in the days. And we always wondering how I can actualize it, where I can like get an audience to engage with it, and more likely make it more tangible, other than being more conceptual or more abstract, where you feel like the audience get kind of detached, because once you over conceptualize things, people kind of initially get detached. So before Dead Laxmiis, I had like couple of ideas about like local punk bands, inspired with different bands that I like and different situations that I liked. But I always struggle how to actualize it, how to make it into work of art. I have tried many times. I really want to make music under a pseudonym, a different name, not just my music, just like a complete as different band saying like this existed, the same story. But it wasn't enough for me. Then I initially wanted to make a film, or like at least like a web series where I can get people to dramatize it and make it more accessible, but then also it has like different cost values. It initially got complicated, and I was waiting. Not that I initially had like the idea of making Dead Laxmiis into actual project, but like the whole, since I really love the punk scene, make a local Sri Lankan punk scene, real or not, and. Very recently, with the boom of AI art, it was very very enlightening for me, because I realized like this is the ideal tool that I can use instantly and make this story happen. So I had the story before. I had what's the band's name, what's the situation going to be. With AI, I realized I can go into more detail and use AI to make it more visually accessible.
Right.
That's how and why the Dead Laxmiis was presented as more like a story than artwork, because it was kind of the other way around. Like usually you paint or draw something and you conceptualize it. It was more, even now it's more always concepts. But I want to tell a story, like more like a storybook, like more people initially engage with stories than abstractions in my head.
Right. So, but in the topic of alternate history, it's beyond art, right? It's beyond creativity. It's beyond the visuals of it. It's even beyond the story in itself. It does something to the present society. It disrupts understandings, contexts, and it's alternative. It brings in something completely non-existent to the conversation, and showcases almost a hint of possibility of what and how things could have been if this came into the real. What got you to kind of put it out there? What did you feel? What responses did you get when you played with that? When you created that alternative that you would have liked to see in for real?
Yeah, that's actually one of the reasons that I didn't actually put it out saying like this is AI generated work initially, but I mentioned in the title saying the story that never happened, the band that never happened. It was actually the greatest punk band of Sri Lanka that never happened. So that was the little bit of catch, saying sort of a hint, but I not even in hashtags or any sort of this thing I didn't mention anywhere particularly, or like I didn't put myself there saying this is AI generated. In my head I knew at first glance instantly, since people are getting more used to it, AI work and its aesthetic, and people are going to say like, oh, this is AI generated story, cool. That I didn't expect anything to blow out, or just like cool story, let's move on situation. But it went both ways, and some people even sending messages saying like how they can find the band, when was this happening, and some people actually saying like I was going out to gigs but I never witnessed this band, and interestingly some even recalling saying, oh, I remember this band played, and lots of what do you call varieties of comments and ideas around the band. And I was very intrigued to see like, okay, like this is what's making history all about, that you have maybe little to no information, and you make like entire universe, or more fables, or more facts, or more stories around it. Then with people it gets more actualized, it gets more real. And to this day, like there's comments still going on, people saying it's AI, and some people even saying like, why you putting out like fake news, or even like false reality, and at the same time people saying this is like interesting story. Like I wish this actually existed. So it goes both ways.
I was just reading a few comments. I'm sure we'll cut this into the video itself, how people get really excited that this existed, and how this is punk in the rawest form, to somebody actually saying they only lasted 2 years. This is what happens to all clueless women rights activists. So there's a lot of hate that comes in to very different dynamics and angles as well by using this story. So it's really interesting. I'm sure you'd have had a lot of DMs as well coming to you as threats, but also as curious encouragements to find out what this is. I think this is a really interesting exercise or a play almost to understand how people react to these things and what it triggers for people to put out. So let me just go a little bit deeper into the concept, Muvindu. Why Dead Laxmiis? Like why a Tamil women's band? Why Tamil? Why women?
It's more likely started with 2 Tamil women, but it's all female. It's definitely it's all female, but two main figures are Tamil.
Yeah.
And Dead Laxmiis is actually play on bands that I like because I wanted to sound like really like a proper punk band.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure, and I'm talking about something that I know that I can relate to. And Dead, the name Dead is simply because it's like a kind of homage to the band Dead Kennedys. So I took the Dead, so I have that sort of raw element, sort of what you call that punk elements, that raw sound. And Laxmi is more than anything to have that holy and the unholy together, have that aspect. And since most even like early punk bands is all about the whole scenario is all about anti-establishment and being anarchic and all of that. So it's more like when everybody know what Laxmi represents. And it's like more like these girls are saying that we are anti that. So that's why Dead Laxmiis. So it's more like in a harsh way, it's more like a anti sort of a middle finger to, in punk's world, in punk situation, it's more like an anti middle finger to the capitalism. And at the same time, they are just being raw. So it's more like a play on words, because I didn't want to overly conceptualize the name of the band, because it's more like a play on words, which sounds like, okay, this sounds like a punk band.
Sure, but each of the women in it, they have a name, they have identity, there's a there's a particular thing they're wearing, instrument they're playing. Were there reasons behind all of those?
Yeah, for sure. Because I was always like having these like mental pictures, like in my head, like if there were to have like a Sri Lankan punk scene, what would be it? And before this, I had like a whole different world that I created. Like mostly, I write these things thinking that I'm going to make a film, but it's always get difficult and it's complicated. But I don't know how to after point to actualize them. So before this, I wrote like a whole story, like a world about like a Buddhist punk scene. So it was height when the whole single A movement and all of that happened.
So was it a sadhu band?
One member is like ex-sadhu. I don't know the right word for it.
Okay.
And yeah, so
does he look like Nanasara? No. Okay.
No. No. It's like
he's not punk.
It's like a whole different thing. Because initially I was very inspired. To this day, I am and was inspired about by the Muslim punk scene, Takwako's book, and it was actually written by the guy Michael Muhammad Knight, and he made this entire fictitious story. It's like basically a book like a novel, because he wanted to see this like very drastic, almost oxymoronic two elements together, which is very unlike the Muslim punk scene. But when he self-published it, this is USA by the way, people actually writing for him asking like where I can find these bands. So when he didn't expect that reply at all, and people then said like, okay, if there are no bands, we are gonna be the band. Right now, almost think 60 people are active, or 60 bands in part of saying Takwako's the Muslim punk scene. So that was the initial. I was like, okay, you can do that, and it will start from fiction. That's the very wireframe of this work as well. From that idea to Buddhist punk scene, I want to make it more edgy. And it was almost all male, typical three-piece sort of punk band with my first idea. Then I want to get more edgy, people get more triggered, get engaged. And it started with simply like imagining like a fully chaotic punk mosh pit where women playing this hardcore music wearing sari, looking very traditional, but almost in the mosh pit. And that I liked it very much, the visual. Then I built on stories, and in the meantime, while I was sitting on it, the recent protests happened, and so it was all just what you call injected into the story.
So moments, multitude of moments, creating it for you. But had you had the resources and time, Dead Laxmiis might have been a film, and perhaps not just a reveal and a project
Yeah.
of social media, is what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to dive into a little bit more of this band and this historic narrative that you've created. It happens during the time of war, right? What's that relevance to you? Why did you pick that point in time?
Yeah.
Is one story. Let's start with that.
Okay. I think I personally, I have like, this is like a very personal point of view.
Yeah.
I couldn't or I can't directly relate to the war that happened. I can only sympathize or empathize by the information that I took.
Right.
I'm saying this, knowing my privilege and how I'm saying it. That's why I said,
Yeah.
from point of view, I don't want to say like, yeah, I can actually relate to it, that I honestly feel about it.
Right.
I only know the information.
Right.
And I only saw TV and I saw the war through news because I was in Colombo.
Right.
Right. There was no personal connection and I was in school.
Right.
And but recently when the protests happened, where I am conscious and I can work around it,
Yeah.
and I can actually participate. And most of us, including all of us, like, we made a lot of statements using art, having bands playing there, all of that. I was like, the best punk era would be the height of war era.
Right.
Why, like that would be the best time to be rebellious with music.
Right.
And what would be the most original thing, having like an all-female punk band,
Right.
led by a Tamil woman,
Yeah.
right? So that's like, that was my edge. So
Right.
that's why,
Right.
and you can branch into a lot of things, like the whole diasporic kids right now and the diasporic politics now. That's why I said I don't want to like branch into it considerably too much,
Right.
because my initial point is that the story.
Right.
But that time is always interesting because it's not too recent,
Yes.
but it's not way far away that you can't recall.
Yeah.
And right now, people are mistaken a lot of events to realities and vice versa. So I think that time period, I think that's why people feel like, okay, maybe I saw this band,
Right.
sort of that weird deja vu nostalgic
Yes.
thing, because that's the time period.
Yeah. So everybody kind of felt a need for this,
Yeah.
perhaps in their own way. Might not be a female punk band, but
Yeah.
that resistance and that rebellion.
Yeah, and
was
and
felt.
more than anything, that was the time where I was personally exposed to local underground rock music, metal music, a lot of good bands, and that was my introduction as well. So I can personally recall to that and that particular sound or that scene
Right.
back then.
Right. Okay. I'm going to connect Dead Laxmiis with a common trait in most of your art, and that's the femininity or the relation to females. In your work, like beyond Dead Laxmiis, in your collages, even in Kotta Baba, the film, there is a very, very feminine part to the story, a very deep connection to either venture into the females or working with females' traits or body parts or whatever it is, right? So when you create this alternative piece of history with a punk band, why make it all female? What is femininity to you? And why, I asked this question from you before and you said you wanted to make it more edgy, and for you more edge was making it all female.
Yeah.
So is a woman punk band the ultimate rebellion to you?
Within this criteria for me, yes, and especially when it comes to Sri Lanka.
Right.
And I mean, lots of unknown territories, like first of all, like what is punk here, and what's the femininity and the freedom and rights and all of that, and again coming back to Sri Lanka, lots of unknown territories, and I'm combining them together conceptually, to least. And even with the Dead Laxmiis and all my other work, like not I always my in my head, most in my creative work, my voice in my head is very feminine. So for an example, if there's a film happening, shooting me, I want the narrator to be a woman. have like a female voice
Right.
narrating myself.
Okay. Okay.
Right, so like for an example, somebody's mentally reading a letter and you hear a voice. So I want that voice to be like a female voice.
Got it. Got it. Yeah.
I think mostly because I grew up with a sister and my mother being very aesthetically conscious, and even to this date I can go out shopping with a woman and enjoy. I wouldn't hold the purse outside. I would actually go and very picky about it.
Yeah.
And so with that sort of energy, and I always, it's not like a second choice. It's like almost like by what you call instinct.
Right.
I go to that energy, and not just because I am as a male, I identify as male, and I'm attracted to females. That is there too, but it's always, even with Dead Laxmiis, I want to be the part of this band, like
Right.
I
As a
want
woman.
like not like looking like appreciating the band from outside. So all the main two characters in Dead Laxmiis, Yadvi and PCP, both of them are like splits of my own self.
Right.
So I have even like how they're going to dress, how they look, and what's the words they are going to use, who's speaking in Tamil,
Right.
Sinhalese, English, all of that.
Right.
It's all me.
Right.
So I don't want to be in love with them. I
Right.
am them. So
Okay.
that's my very, very first instinctively what you call choice of femininity and
Right.
female
beautiful.
fragments. Yeah.
So there's a lot more to Dead Laxmiis and the characters from what you're saying, beyond what we have seen that came out in your 3 posts that happened from 3rd of January to 10 days ahead, right? So is there more that will come?
Right now I'm still taking it really slow to see how the audience or at least the crowd on social media are going to how they are going to interact with this or turn this, because
Right.
after the image post I want to create a actual track punk song saying it's from Dead Laxmiis, but I think last month or so some person on YouTube really saying it's from Dead Laxmiis. I think it's like it's not like it's another simple track on like just riding the wave, I guess.
Sure.
But it's interesting, right?
Yeah.
So it's already there, and
Yeah.
and I recently saw like I think somebody from India like doing fan art. So basically,
Of Dead Laxmiis.
yeah, fan art as in like
Nice.
looking at these AI generated images and redrawing them with pastels.
Right.
And yeah, it's very interesting. And right now I don't want to stop the story. I want more like to have this story, the legacy goes on.
Yeah.
But I'm closely watching and waiting to see how this is gonna change or shape, because if I work too much on it, it almost feels like I'm just forcing too hard to be like another social media gimmick to happen.
Right.
Maybe I won't do anything again.
Right.
Maybe die down, or fingers crossed the ultimate would be like an actual band coming out saying Dead Laxmiis.
Yeah, I'd like to be in it.
Yeah, without any influences of mine.
Yeah.
Not that I'm gonna start a band, but something like that,
Sure.
like the Takwapo.
Yeah. So you want essentially the alternative history to take a life of its own in the reality, be it through fan art, be it through other people feeding into that piece of alternate history, or it becoming a reality of its own. You're just letting it emerge.
Not just the good comments, anything like any memes, any trolling, any even saying like this is blasphemy, I should take notes, all of that, sure. And maybe after this I'm going to talk about the project more open, saying that this is AI, this is alternative, that these are the feedbacks like what we are doing right now, but that doesn't mean it's going to stop, or this is not in my control anymore.
Sure. And I mean, since you mentioned it, there were, I think, people who also threatened you that they'll go to courts saying that this is fake if you don't take it down. So with that, I want to kind of make segue into the type of resistance society always brings up for something new, specifically coming from technology or tech affiliated. AI art in particular, ChatGPT, we saw there was a lot of, polarity conversations happening. The music festival in the jungle recently, very different narrative there. The ticket sale of a very young artist that happened recently, again, a lot of different kind of conversations happening there also. But all of this is coming through to anything that is proposing a new process or a method to art, right? So is this because of ethical boundaries? Is this because of social, cultural status quos that people are used to, and this is something new and it's like kind of upsetting the status quo, is like upsetting what we're used to? What's your take on it, and what's ethics to you as an artist?
Ethics in art? Yeah, going back to the first question, I think specifically talking about AI art, even the ongoing conversation, lots of arguments and discussions about artists' ethics and artists losing their jobs, and I completely understand how it goes all to a technical sphere, talking about like AI borrowing this, not borrowing, working on this data set and who's feeding them, artists, AI stealing other artists' styles. It goes on, right? And even now, and definitely, I think the more than anything, like for me, the best thing that AI art or AI, that sort of area is like re-asking the same question: what is art? So right now, on like a very global sphere, on social media, every artist or non-artist talking about what is art. And when you take a step back, you can initially see like not the same conversation, but it's almost like the same loop, because they are when the camera was invented, and what's going to happen to artists, portrait artists. And then again to NFTs and all of that. It's like NFT comes in, gallery is going to go, but NFT is also there, camera is also there. I think AI is going to be there too. So it's not picking sides. It's how you're going to be creative with it. If I mean, I always say this, like if you're an artist worrying about you're losing your job, you should, like, because you are doing a job, and definitely you're going to lose the job. And I hope you will lose the job because of an AI. If you can't be creative with your life, that's the point of just drawing something pretty, right? So AI is there. So where's the expression? So that's sort of more questions. When it comes to ethics in art, I feel like for me personally, it's all depends on the context, and more than anything, it all depends on who's getting paid.
Okay.
Right. So ethics actualization, ethics branch into like copyrights, and who's owning ownership, and for an example, like what's ethics in art in what context for me. So if we are talking about, okay, this particular artwork in this gallery, so we have to talk about all the politics in that gallery, who are the curators, who's the artist, how much artist is getting. So it's all of that. It's very unlikely, or it's a very unnecessarily philosophical question to zoom out and talk about ethics in art, because I don't think we can just pin down to one thing and say this is art and these are the ethics we are talking about. So it always goes with the context, and like it or not, after the artwork, art business was there and is here, any artist have deal with it, and I'm not saying it's good, but it's the reality. So you have to be really careful with ethics, especially when it comes to art and which side you are on. I think most likely with AI boom, artists are getting more insecure, and especially local artists, because they question like, what's my part in this? So in my head, it goes back to the first, how do you live your life? So if you work as an illustrator to have bread and butter, you are an illustrator. So whereas the art in your illustration, so you have to go back again. So I illustrate just to feed my family, or this is what I want to do, or trying to find a sweet spot. I think that's the struggle from the early day onwards, finding that sweet spot. Not to be a sellout, but have money. Not to die poor, but have money. I think it's like it's really interesting conversation, but I don't think right now, personally, I can say like these are the ethics, these are the arts. It's a constant, ongoing process.
Yeah, yeah. So, this was for you as a creator, almost a 10-day, 10 days of expression. You put your first post out, then a second, and then a third came in on the 10th day. But the society and the audience kept it rolling with comments, with direct messages, with other fan art that they created, and it even went on gossip news or Hero News in Sri Lanka. So, what's your biggest takeaway? What did you learn from this whole encounter as an artist?
Including the feedback?
Yeah, the whole episode. Yeah.
I think what I realized is mostly, and in my head, like there's like a high possibility of like creating alternative history or alternate histories, not for the sake of fooling people or just not for the sake of getting clout on social media, but other than even not just making a statement, to have like interesting ways of storytelling, to give away new ideas. And for my head, this was like a form of protest what's going on, right? Because how artists or any creative would engage with the reality or have certain conversations and how to use your art. So because for a long time, even now, we having all these accessories and tools, but especially here, we are still trying to work things out in like a very olden ways.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So even one of the main reasons for me to make this like alternate history, because for a long time, even now, we always talk about like 10 giants, that king, that story, very so much fantasies. I mean, like we are an island, we don't have like a pirate legacy.
Yeah, we have our own legacies though, but
yeah, we do. I mean, like island, be like I always like wanted to like Ravana to be a pirate. In my head, but
he was, but yeah, okay.
Yeah, right. That's a different story. But yeah, so have like my histories that I can be part of, relate to, where I can take this from. And right now it's moving fast. Generation is changing so much, and you can clearly see forms of old forms or old ways are very unlikely gonna hold this new ground. So, like it or not, not everybody has to change, but especially somebody's creative, you have to read what's going on and see how you can be creative or play your ground with all these new tools. And I think that's the most creative part that anybody can do. And with these feedback, I realized, and it's a possibility, and it's not hard at all. Right now, with accessories, with this accessibility to internet and all of that, once it was very high class thing to be an artist, or like it's a very classist thing, but right now it's very generalized. It's very decentralized. So nobody's stopping your creativity. You just have to pick the right tool and put out your passion.
Go at it.
Yeah, because right now you can absolutely go like almost next level without costing too much. Yeah, and it works very well here. Yeah.
So final question.
Yeah.
If Dead Laxmiis was not an alternate history that you created, if it actually happened for real, what, 30 years ago, 20 years ago?
Almost, yeah.
Yeah. And they survived the war, and they continued their work, they performed, and they've put out their albums. What would you do with them today? What would now look like for Muvindu Binoy with Dead Laxmiis in reality?
Possibly, if I found the same story as it is, probably going to do like a documentary first, like archive them.
Right.
Definitely in video form or form of filmmaking, and more than that, hopefully do a collaboration, musically.
Music collab.
Yeah.
Would you date their daughter?
No.
Why not?
I don't think so, because punks don't date punks.
Good answer. So I think that's it from us. Thank you, Muvindu, for choosing to have this chat with me today to actually come out with this story. This is the first reveal of Dead Laxmiis. It's been more than 2 months since it came out, and I'm very, very honored that we got to have this chat, and excited to see what Dead Laxmiis grew out to be through you or through anybody else who's out there. So thank you again, and keep creating.
Thank you so much.